Well, hey, you guys. Yeah, it's Saturday, and I'm doing another solo live stream. And finally, I'm getting around to doing another Tomes of Terror, another book review, because I haven't done one for such a long time, because I really haven't had much time to read in the last few weeks, which really sucks. Like I said, I'm still working on Brahms' Slewfoot, which I would really like to finish at some point. I think I'm only about a quarter of the way through it, and at this point I haven't read it for so long that I might have to like start it over because I don't like remember what happened. So what I decided to do was I was kind of going to go on my Kindle Unlimited thing and look for some stuff that was shorter that I could just read in, a couple of hours. So I would at least have a book to talk about, because I know that some of you guys really like the book reviews even more than the movie reviews. But, like I said, I don't get as much time to read as I used to. So this time around, I'm talking about, now they're calling it a short story, although I guess I would term it more a novella, I guess. It's 58 pages, at least the ebook version. I don't even think there's a print version, to be honest. And I didn't, okay, so I didn't even know about this. I was just kind of scrolling through Kindle Unlimited, looking for something short that I could just read in a couple of hours. And this novella came up, and it's called The Pram by Joe Hill. And I didn't realize when I first checked it out that it's actually part of a series. So apparently what Amazon did, like this year in the run up to Halloween, like at the beginning of October or something, they're starting to do this new thing, and I kind of hope that they do this every year now. But they kind of put out like 6 standalone novellas by 6 different kind of popular horror authors. And they're, if you have Kindle Unlimited, which I do, you can read them for free. And I think, at least I'm pretty sure this is what happened, like when I downloaded the Kindle Unlimited version to my library, it also automatically gave me a free audiobook version from Audible, which I didn't listen to because I just read it, but I thought that was pretty cool that they're just like giving it away for free, like if you have a subscription. And I'm assuming if you have a subscription to Audible, then you would get the ebook for free as well if you don't have the Kindle Unlimited, because those are 2 different things. But yeah, so I got the Audible thing for free. Speaking of which, before I get too far into it, I am an Audible affiliate. They're a sponsor of 13 o'clock. So if you click, there's a link down in the description box, and if you click on this link, then you actually get a 30-day free trial of Audible, which obviously is Amazon's, audiobook repository, which also has lots of podcasts and things like that, thousands, perhaps millions of stuff that you can listen to. During this 30-day free trial, you can listen to anything you want on there for nothing, for no points, and you also get 1 point to use like for something that you can buy on there that you can keep forever. If you're already like an Amazon Prime member, then you actually get 2 points to spend on stuff that you can keep forever also. So it's a really good deal. So like I said, my link is down in the description box. So if you click on that link, I get a small commission, but also you get the 30-day trial. And like I said, it's a really good deal. Audible is a really cool service. So, please think about clicking that link and subscribing, please. And thank you. So yeah, so it seems as though any one of these 6 books, which I've checked all of them out because I'm eventually going to think about probably reviewing them at some stage. But, if you do download them to your Kindle library, and it will also give you like an audiobook version, which I thought was kind of cool. So the other 5, this one was Joe Hill, and so I'm going to read this one first because this was the first one. I guess they're numbered. I don't know why they're numbered, but I don't know if they came out like, I don't know. I don't know if that was the first one that came out. So I said, well, this is number 1, so I'm going to read this one. And I really like Joe Hill, so you know what I mean. But the other ones, there's one by Grady Hendrix, which I've actually already read, so I might review that one in a little while too. There's one by Josh Mallerman, who wrote Bird Box, among other things. There's one by Paul Tremblay. There's one by Jason Mott, and there's one by Chandler Baker. So, and they all look pretty good. Like, they all have kind of standardized covers, and they're all, Amazon's calling it their Creature Features collection. So they're all kind of monster-y type stories, which is cool. I really like that. So they're thematically similar, but they're completely different stories, at least as far as I could determine. So yeah, so I'm kind of hoping that Amazon does this every year for Halloween. That would be really, really cool, because you get to read like all these stories by all these authors for, essentially free. Even, having a Kindle Unlimited subscription isn't free, but you know what I mean. So, like I said, I decided to start with Joe Hill's story. It's 58 pages long, at least in the ebook version. And as I mentioned, it's called The Pram. Now, I've really liked all of Joe Hill's works that I've read. I haven't read Nosferatu yet, but I did read Horns and Heart-Shaped Box and like a couple of the other ones. And those two I really, really liked a lot. And I thought this story was really just as brilliant as those. Now, I will say that this particular novella, I dug the concept of it so much that I almost wish that it had been expanded into a full-length novel. Then again, I mean, on the other hand, there is kind of something to be said for just this very brief, nasty story. And the fact that the lore, I mean, if that's what you want to call it, is only kind of explained in really short strokes, and it leaves a lot to the imagination. Horror, as I think I've mentioned many times, like on the show, I think it's better when it's left somewhat ambiguous. Now, that's not to say that this story like leaves a bunch of questions unanswered. It doesn't really. It does kind of like fill in some lore around, the sect at the center of this, but it's not over-explained, and I think that that's, to the story's benefit. You know what I mean? I thought it was like a good length. So this is the setup of the story. So you have a couple named Willie and Marianne, and they, prior to the events of the story, they'd been living in this kind of cramped condo in Brooklyn, I think it was. So at some point in the past year or something like that, Marianne has a miscarriage, and this was a baby that both of them had very much wanted. So this was like a really horrible like tragedy, right? Now, Marianne, understandably, after this happened, like falls into this really profound depression that she's in for like months. Like she just lays around the house in the dark and like doesn't clean or doesn't go anywhere and doesn't do any work and all this other kind of stuff, and she's just devastated, you know what I mean? Like I said, understandably. And Willie, her husband, I mean, for his part, he seemed to suffer the loss just as deeply as she did, but he didn't seem to necessarily deal with it in a real productive way, because he was so focused on worrying about his wife that he was kind of maybe not addressing his own grief or his own mental illness, mental health, I guess is what I meant to say. But it's just kind of like, which I think is kind of common in that sort of situation, for men in that situation. They would just be like, not even realize that they are also mourning the loss of a child or, a baby that they had wanted, because they're so worried about their wife. And I think that that's kind of what is happening here. On top of that, he also came down with COVID and lost his sense of smell, which does actually kind of play into the story a little bit, like as the time goes on. So all of this information is kind of conveyed in bits, like through flashbacks, because like I said, this kind of happened like prior to the events of the story. Now, at some stage during the aftermath of the miscarriage, Willie becomes really preoccupied with, I need to get Marianne away from this condo, like where the tragedy took, because it happened in the condo, you know what I mean, the miscarriage. And he's starting to think of the place as like a morgue, like we'll never be able to live here ever again, because like every time we go in that bathroom or whatever, we're just going to see that. So he decides he's going to get her the fuck out of there, and that's going to help. So he does all this research, and he eventually finds this beautiful farmhouse for cheap, which is it's kind of run down, but like can be fixed up, you know what I mean? And it's kind of in this isolated town called Hoboken in Maine. Now, the weird thing about this that you find out at the beginning as they're driving out there with the realtor is that Marianne actually grew up in Maine, only a few miles from where this town is located, and she's never heard of it, which she thinks is very strange. Now, the realtor claims that this is just because, oh, well, this town is just so off the beaten path, but Marianne kind of makes an offhand comment while they're on the way out there that she almost attributes like sort of like a magical property, maybe, like to this town, like, oh, maybe it's only there like for people who need it or something like that. So you can tell that there's already some kind of maybe supernatural kind of shit going on, right? Now, when Willie and Marianne see the farmhouse, they're just completely both charmed by it, and Marianne seems to like perk right up. She's just like, oh my god, this place is beautiful, and she's thinking of all the stuff she can do with it, and, you know, she really seems to get her groove back, I guess. And the town itself of Hoboken is like really, really charming also, in like this real super 19th century kind of way, you know what I mean? Well, in fact, while they're out and about, or before they even get to the farmhouse, they see this couple on the side, they're walking on the side of the road that they think are Amish, like just the way they're dressed and stuff like that. But, you know, they got like the frock coats and the bonnet with the big bonnet and everything like that. But the realtor tells them, well, this is a similar religious sect to the Amish, but slightly different. It's the townspeople call them the sin planters, okay? And she says, well, there's not a lot of them, and most of the ones that are left are like really old, you know, they're like in their 80s or 90s, but they still like contribute to the local economy by, you know, selling their produce, and they do like hand churned butter and all that kind of stuff, like to the country store that's there in town, right? So after Willie and Marianne kind of settle into this new rural life that they're having, Willie finds that he enjoys, they both work at home, so you know what I mean, that's that taken care of, you know what I mean? So he finds that he enjoys walking to the country store. Now you can get to it like through this kind of circuitous route, but there's kind of a shortcut that goes through this path in the woods, and it has like all of these trees over it like a tunnel, and it's really, really, and he thinks it's really, really beautiful and peaceful out there. And Willie eventually learns that the ancestors of the current sin planter people, like the sect, they planted all of those trees out there like a long time ago. And also that they cut themselves to like feed the trees with their blood, which sounds a little bit unsettling to say the least. But nobody seems to have anything bad to say about the sin planters, and it's just kind of like, hey, they just keep to themselves, and that's kind of, you know, how it goes, you know. Now, during one of Willie's grocery runs to the country store, the nice old man that runs the place, who's like an English dude named Brian, he loans Willie this real janky old classic pram, like a baby carriage, you know what I mean, to carry his groceries back to his house in, because he bought so much stuff that was heavy, and he's like, you know, you don't want to walk a mile back in the woods, like carrying all this shit. So he gives him this baby carriage. Now, over the course of the story, and like I said, this is a pretty short story, it's only like 58 pages, Willie starts to believe, I'm trying not to give too much of it away, but he does start to believe that the pram sometimes has a baby in it, okay? And he starts getting obsessed with this thing, like to the point where it seems like at times that he might be was kind of losing his marbles a little bit, okay? So there's that kind of whole situation. And like I said, I don't really want to spoil what happens like other than that, but that's kind of like the only hint that I want to give you. So as I said, I mean, this was a great story. I really liked this a lot. I mean, Joe Hill, he's just a really good writer, and he's really fantastic at conveying just this eerie mood about this town, and particularly about this path through the woods, with just a few words. You know what I mean? Like, I could really vividly picture this town, like the house and the path and the store and everything and the shed out back and all that kind of stuff. I could just really vividly picture it in my mind. And so he's really good at like painting a picture without over explaining things. You know what I mean? And Willie, we're seeing everything from his perspective. It's not in first person; it's actually in limited third. But we're seeing like everything from his perspective, pretty much. He's a really relatable character. I mean, he's clearly very bitter about the miscarriage and about like all these kind of terrible things that have befallen him and his wife in the past year, however long it's been. But he does seem to be trying to deal with it, usually through kind of like a black sense of humor. But as we see, he's not dealing with it maybe as well as he thought he was, so that kind of plays into it as well. Now, I will say that, and I don't want to go too far in this direction, but the themes of the Pram are somewhat similar to the themes of Pet Sematary, which of course was written by Joe Hill's dad, Stephen King, many years ago. And like I said, they're not similar stories, but the themes it's thematically kind of similar, because in the sense that they're both written from the point of view of a father who has lost a child and is having a hard time coming to terms with that. You know what I mean? And kind of like leads him down a dark path eventually, leads him down a dark path. And interestingly too, and I think there was a little bit of this in Pet Sematary as well, but I think it was kind of more, it's kind of more clear here, I think. But the character of Willie in this seems at first to be like completely unaware that he's also grieving the miscarriage. And this lack of awareness kind of causes him to retreat into anger and resentment towards his wife, for like it being her fault, you know what I mean? Even though he doesn't obviously think that consciously, but unconsciously he maybe does blame her. But it seems like he's not really fully cognizant of that. And so that in turn kind of acts as the catalyst for this supernatural angle that comes along later and kind of plays into the story as good. It's almost kind of like it's, feeding on that type of thing. So I'm going to say, like, I'm sure that some people reading this might wish that, like I said, it was longer, that like more of the backstory of the Sin Planters was fleshed out, or, Willie's destructive emotions were kind of, explored further maybe. But to be honest, I mean, I thought this was pretty much the perfect length. I think it got across the horror of the story in just a really good, like, economic fashion. Like, it gave you just enough information for you to get, like, invested in the characters and invested in the situation. And then when shit starts going sideways, where, like, you really want to see what happens and you feel kind of bad and all this other kind of stuff. So, I mean, if you really like Joe Hill, or Stephen King for that matter, I can't imagine that you wouldn't like this as well. And it's like a really short, fun, like, action-packed kind of read. So, if you have Kindle Unlimited, like I said, it's free to read on there. And I think if you have an Audible subscription, which, like I said, if you don't have one yet, like, click that link down in the description box and get one and get a 30-day free trial. So then you can read and listen to it for free, and it only takes like an hour. It only took me like an hour and a half to read it or whatever. So I can't imagine that you wouldn't really dig it. So yeah, I really actually would recommend it. And like I said, I have checked out the other 5 stories in the series, and I will probably be kind of maybe sprinkling some reviews of them in the upcoming weeks. Like I said, I've already read the Grady Hendrix one, so I might be reviewing that one at some point, maybe next week or something like that. But yeah, and that one was really good too. So I haven't read the other ones yet, but we'll see how that goes. Like I said, I thought this was a really cool idea, like for Amazon to do for Halloween, and I kind of hope that they do it every year. That would be really awesome. But yeah, so I guess that's going to wrap it up for this book review. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We will be back on Monday night, And I think we're going to cover. Somebody, I think it was Danny, had a great idea on the Friday night sidetrack show that we should do the two pilots for a haunting, which is haunting in Connecticut and a haunting in Georgia. Do those because we just bought those, and compare them to the quote unquote Hollywood versions, like because they made The Haunting in Connecticut from 2009, I think that was, and then Haunting in Connecticut 2, Ghosts of Georgia, which was 2013, I want to say. And both of those are available. I think one of them's on Netflix and one of them's on Amazon Prime. So we're gonna watch both of those and then kind of do like a big mega review, like comparing the two. So that's probably what we're going to be doing on Monday. So hopefully you guys can join us for that. And so until then, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.